So, hello everyone, and welcome to my Let's Talk series, where I share conversations with those who support families navigate their international life successfully. Before we dive into the topic of today, if you follow us live, please share your questions and comments in the comment section, and we will try to answer them on screen. And if you watch the recordings, please do the same. We are going to try to keep on this conversation and to continue the conversation even after this today. I'm very happy now and honored to have Yoshito Darmon-Shimamori as my guest today, also known as at multilingual_dad on Instagram, for those who don't follow him yet. So please go and have a look. Yoshito is also one of my partners, how I call them, partners in multilingualism at our YouTube channel, Activities for Multilingual Families. He is a passionate secondary school teacher, founder of the Library for Multilinguals, and author of the Parent's Guide to Raising Multi-literate Children. I think you have it in the background there, right?
Yeah.
And he's also the author of the soon-to-be-published graphic novel, In Search of the Lost Words, a bilingual time travel adventure. And he's also father of two multilingual and multi-literate boys, just so on the side, right? And I'm sure you are much, much more, Yoshito, but I stop here. So for those of you who raise their children abroad like we do, and with many languages, with multiple languages, it's not that easy for our children also to become multi-literate if this is one of our goals. And especially when these languages are not taught at school. What we want our children, though, to have, and this is not always that easy, but we are both working in that direction to help parents to make it easier and to make it especially fun for our children. Now, we all know that reading with our children is very, very important for our children's overall literacy development. So if you, Yoshito, on this page, like I mentioned before, in your library for multilinguals, you already offer a lot of materials for families who raise their children in a multi-literate way, if I can say so.
Yeah.
And I would like to just specify a moment what we mean with literacy, right? Because literacy, depending on the language that we have or how we use the term, can have different meanings. And I hope you don't mind if I just share this definition that might be a little bit more helpful for those who follow us today. So we are using now today the term of literacy in its broader sense, which means particular ways of thinking about and doing reading and writing with the purpose of understanding or expressing thoughts or ideas in written form in some specific context of use. So that is a little bit the way that we are going to talk about. But the title of today, I'm going to shut up. I promise very soon. As the title of today's talk is, Let's Talk is how graphic novels can foster multiliteracy. And we mention also graphic novel.
Yeah.
Let's also make sure that we understand what this means. Maybe you want to quickly just say what is meant with graphic novels before I ask then the first question, Yoshito.
Okay. But first, I want to thank you for having me on your channel. It's really a great honor to be here because you do so much for multilingual families, and yeah, so thank you very much. And so you were asking what's a graphic novel. So a graphic novel is basically like a novel, so a story that's illustrated. So instead of having just words saying everything, you have illustrations with speech bubbles, etc. It's a bit different from comic books or comic strips because the whole book is one story. In like comic strips can be over a page where there is a fun scene, or it doesn't need to be fun, but it's one short story. A graphic novel is over the whole book, and like novels, it can be a series, so there can be several books that make up the whole story.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, because I understand on, and when I looked into the terms also in different languages that we speak and somehow share also, there are some overlappings in the
Yeah,
definitions, right? But just to make clear what we are talking about today. But I had the privilege and pleasure also to see a little bit the starting of your journey and the development of the journey from not exactly the idea, but I remember when you said, "Oh, I would like to write this graphic novel." And I must say, it's very impressive what you did, and also the sketches that you made. I know we're not going to talk necessarily about the sketches, but I would say, well, you might be a good screenwriter as well. Just I leave it like that. But anyway, Yoshito, maybe you can share with us or tell us what made you decide to write this graphic novel, and what led you also to choose this particular format.
yeah.
Why not a chapter book, for example?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for the compliment, but I can't draw. I can sketch quickly. So yeah, so it's maybe not the most obvious choice for me to go for graphic novel, but I chose graphic novel for several reasons. So the first is that in a graphic novel we have images that help us understand the situation. So even if the child doesn't have a wide range of vocabulary, they can understand the situation, and maybe these images can help as well learn new words in the language. And compared to chapter books, for example, because there is a lot of image in the graphic novels and speech bubbles, the texts are shorter in the graphic novel. So the child doesn't need to be able to read really fluently or quickly. They can just even like they can even just focus on some things to read, not read everything. And little by little, as they get more fluent, they can read more in more details, which is something you can't do when you read a chapter book, because if you skip some parts, you would miss part of the story. But in graphic novels, you have the images that can help you follow the story, even if you don't read in details. So it helps a lot when children can't read really well. And also, graphic novels have the advantage they can touch a wide range of age groups, um, because we can talk about something very serious or for teenagers or adults even. But because there's less to read, it's more accessible. And that can be helpful for the confidence we want to build in our children when they are learning to read.
Hmm. And I have a curious question. I'm always very curious, but what was first? Did you first draw the story or did you first write the story for this book?
Uh, so it was a bit of both. I first put the story down in writing,
Mhm.
uh, and then sorry. So I first put it down in writing, and then when I wanted to sketch it out, I realized that so because it's on one page, a scene must be finished, or it needs to be intriguing enough, so we want to turn the page. So there is some constraints, and so I had to rewrite a bit or add some details or take off some details from the original script. And also, while I was doing this, so I'm not a professional writer. I've learned while doing this to write fiction. So I have read books, attended workshops, etc. So my story have changed as well. So it's a bit of the three combined together that made the final story. So it took me several months to have sketches that I can show to people to give me some feedback.
Yes, and I can imagine that this switch, or let's say this combination of writing, having in mind a reader, and sketching, having in mind someone who reads the pictures, this requires quite some. It's a switch, but also it requires a way to combine the both to
Yeah.
make sense and to be appealing, like you said, to turn the page and not to say, "Oh well, okay, put it aside."
Yeah.
But that's very interesting. I really like that, and it's thank you for sharing this with me.
Okay.
So in what, and as we are talking about multilinguals, right? In what way does now this particular format of the book help multilingual children? Because I mean, what we usually think of when we say some material or resources for multilingual children. You think about bilingual books, for example, that were
Yeah,
not that affordable or not there when my children were younger, but there are a lot of bilingual books. So you have
yeah.
one page with one language, the other one. What is particular in this format that you chose that helps multilingual children?
So there are different things, but the first thing that I wanted to for the multilingual children is read. So my aim is really to help children grow up confidently and proud of their heritage and multiple languages and cultures. So I wanted the book to have this message as well to empower the reader. Uh, and so because it's about bilingualism or multilingualism, I wanted to tackle some myths as well. And one of them, which is one that I suffered as well personally when I grew up, is the expectation that from people that a bilingual child should be able to speak perfectly both languages. And it's rare, it doesn't happen often. And when it happens, it's a lot of work behind. It doesn't just happen like that. So I wanted to talk about this and make it normalize a bit the fact that multilingual children don't speak as well one language than the other, or they can talk maybe about one topic really well in one language, but not in another one. And I guess we can also see us as adults because we're learning new languages and we learn some vocabulary in one topic, but not another. And so I wanted to normalize this and also what makes children want to speak their home language. Because, for example, my sons are growing up in England. They speak English the whole day in school. They have friends with whom they play in English. So English is a lot more natural for them. And they know that we understand English, my wife and me. So why would they speak to us in French and Korean? And so in this book, I explain like the emotional side of speaking a language, but I didn't want to make it like a lecture for children. So it's just in the background, but we can get the message from there. Um, and then, I wanted to make the story appealing for multilingual children. So because it talks about them with a character that's bilingual like them. Uh, and maybe talk about the same difficulties they have. Now, I wanted to make this book especially to motivate children to write in their home language, not just to read or speak, etc. I wanted them to write, and that's because my son, um, it's really difficult to motivate him, and he doesn't like anything that looks like work, uh, and so for example, in this book, it's a story and he contributes to the story, and that would make it more appealing to write. And I made it more, so I wanted to make a story where like the writing was a need. So not that they have to write it, but they want to write it to contribute to the story. So as I said, the main character, Anna, doesn't speak really well one of her languages, so her dad's language. And so when she's in another country, in her dad's country, people talking that language, but she can get just a few words here and then. She's trying to make up the meaning out of it, which is something that we probably do as well when we are not really fluent in the language. And so there are some speech bubbles that are empty for the reader, the child, to work out what the people could be saying in that situation. So there, I think you have an example that you can maybe show with the,
Yes, I can share quickly this one.
yeah. So here we can see that Anna is talking to the little boy and he's saying something, but there's language that he's saying in it. And we can see that she says, sorry, I have no idea what you're saying. And so maybe logically, if we read before and this, he could be asking, what language do you speak or something like that. So we need to make up the meaning from the situation and the small words that she understands that we understand. Um, and yeah, I tried to make the speech bubbles quite big because like when children, oh yeah, it's going to be an A4 format as well. So I
Okay.
wanted to make it quite big so that children have the space to write, even if they write big and it's the beginning, or they can write more detailed if they are more skilled and a bit older.
Yes. So I like, well, these multiple layers on how this novel, this kind of graphic novel, because I think it's a new kind of setup, right?
Yeah,
Of a graphic novel that you have here, or that we will have here. But this raising the awareness of who you are and how you are, and that there is someone else. There is actually a little girl. Maybe we'll talk about this later. Maybe there will be a boy or someone else in the future that you can relate to. So you're not only not alone, but the only one, but you see also the struggle through another person. It's always if we struggle with something, you mentioned this being able to speak to a certain expected level of fluency, or in certain situations, is something that we all experience when we grow up with multiple languages at one point or another, or at many points of our life, and different languages that we add. But it makes it somehow extrapolating from our problem. We see it through the lens of the character
yeah,
of the book, of the hero of the book, if you want to call her like that, and you
yeah,
see what she does with it. So you come up
yeah,
with solutions for her that can actually save or serve yourself as a
yeah,
child. I'm talking now as if I were
yeah.
a child. I find it very, very nice, and a very good idea to have these multiple layers in the whole setup of the book.
Thank
That
you.
is not only, yeah, something you read, you fill in, like many sheets that you have at school or somewhere, where, okay, you focus on adjectives and you fill in the spaces, but there you really have to think about and what you're going to fill in which language, how far you can go, and what kind of means of other resources also you can
Yeah,
add and help take to help yourself. Yes, and you mentioned also the experience that sometimes we have exactly with learning a language or using a language. Um, Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your own experience when you learned to read and
yeah,
write in Japanese.
yeah. So it wasn't easy, but now I'm taking a lot of lessons from my own experience to make sure that my sons don't go through the same difficulties. And so through these books as well, I want other children to benefit from that. So when so my home language was Japanese. I was speaking with my mom and with my dad, it was in French. And I used to go to a Saturday Japanese school when I was in primary school. Then in secondary school, I was lucky enough to go to an international school where I had some lessons in Japanese. Um, and so for me, speaking made sense because I could connect with people. But living in France, I didn't really see the why I had to go through the struggle of learning to read and write, because in Japanese we need to learn the Chinese characters and there are thousands of them, and it was a struggle. And the older I got, the more I was supposed to know, so the less I would be able to read. So it was really a struggle, and I was always only learning to read and write in school. So it was in academic way, and outside school there was nothing that I had to read or write. And when I was picking up a book, there were so many characters I couldn't read that it was making not that fun to read because it was like the type of topic that interested me were out of reach because I didn't have the skills. So it was a like down spiral, I guess. Like it
Mhm.
was very difficult for me to read and write. And so I think the lesson I'm taking out of this is to make sure that we don't leave reading and writing in school. So if, for example, we have children going to a Saturday school or something like that, we don't just say, okay, they are going to be the doing the job of teaching my child to read and write, but we need to make sure it's relevant outside. So, for example, by reading books with them in our home languages, And so this book, for example, that I created is really also a way to take the writing out of something they have to do for school. Um, yeah, or for example, one of the things that they do in Korea and Japan is to write a daily diary. But as a child, I, I didn't like it. My sons had to do it a bit for their Korean school because at some point they were attending a Korean Saturday school. They didn't like it, and I can completely understand. I know some children like to write about what they do during the day, but it didn't motivate them. And yeah, so I tried to create a resource, a book that would be more flexible, so that it's a bit. It's not them; it's imaginary, so they can write whatever they want. Um, because often, for example, my son, if I ask him what did you do today, or like he would summarize it in one sentence, doesn't give much detail. And but if you have a story to write with images, you have most of it done. You just need to complete a bit. And oh yeah, one thing I want to make clear as well for the your audience is that I don't want this book to feel like a workbook where okay, let's sit down and
Yeah.
complete the speech bubbles. It should be more like a time you spend together with your child where you read and try to figure out what people are saying. And then if you think, okay, oh, that's a nice way to say it, or that's a nice pun you found, maybe you ask your child to write it down so that you don't forget it. And maybe
Mhm.
little by little, as they get more confident, or maybe they want to write more, they can complete all the speech bubbles. So even the speech bubbles that are empty, I didn't put that many. I tried to keep it quite so to a few of them, so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. And because I wanted, like I said, to be something for parents and children to spend time together, or grandparents and grandchildren to spend time together to talk about it, I have included some parts where it talks about the culture or the family. And if you could show us what the other slide that I sent you. Yeah. So here we can see at the top on the table, there is a bowl with something that's empty. So at the bottom of the page, there would be an annotation saying what are the typical fruits you find in your grandparents' country. And the child would need to complete. Or in the bottom one, we can see a frame on the wall. And at the bottom of the page, it would be written what was it again? Draw a typical scenery, countryside scenery from your grandparents' country, because then you would think, okay, what is there that's typical in that country but not in my country? So in the country we live in. So, for example, for my sons in Korea, there are loads of uh, rice fields. Is that how it's called? Yeah. So rice fields, and in Korea there are a lot of mountains, so it would be that kind of scenery. But someone living in another country, or for example in France, I used to live close to the Alps, so it would be a different shape of mountains and different scenery. So they can really personalize it and talk with their parents about what is typical in the country, what they see when they go on holidays, etc. So yeah, try to make it more of a something to connect and to discuss about the cultures as well.
Yes, exactly. And I think this is a very, very important part that I would like to highlight because it's not only about language, right?
Yeah,
Not
it's
only about multilingualism, but it's also about the other cultures. And you
yeah,
just mentioned, yes, that they are part of the story that the children can complete.
yeah,
And this is the other level that gets added, right?
yeah,
Where the children become more aware of the differences in cultures.
yeah,
Now, I can imagine that for families that have maybe two cultures or three or four for the parents, because the parents already are multilingual and come from
yeah.
different cultures from their parents' side, that they might need four copies of your novel in order to complete it for every single grandparent's place where they grew up in, or where they maybe meet them during the
Yeah,
holidays, or when they're abroad. But it's also a nice way to make them aware of what is also similar, right?
yeah,
Just the scene that we have there. Let me just quickly reshare this because I like
yeah,
that. where you have also the kitchen, right, with on the top
Yeah.
right. So when it goes on cooking, yeah,
Yeah.
when you have dumplings, you can find dumplings in so many different cuisines around the
Yeah.
world. They have different names and they look different, they taste different. But there are also ways where you can say, oh, well, we have also ravioli in Italy and we have Maltasch in
Yeah.
Dutch, etc. So you can have them everywhere, and that makes them maybe also feel the ways that their cultures and then also the languages are connected and have similar things,
Yeah.
different words for the same thing, but the same kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it consolidates a little bit this way of feeling
Living.
their identity, the
Yeah.
multicultural identity. Yes, yes, exactly. There is someone who has something. Thank you. Nair Correira Ibrahim. I love working with graphic novels, and a bilingual graphic novel is excellent to bilingual children see themselves in the literature. Exactly. The other aspects I really like is the interactivity of the graphic novel. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the comment. It's spot on. Yes, I really like
Very
this.
much.
Yes, thank you. Um, Yes, this graphic novel, as we are talking about different languages, right? And this was, I think, one of the first questions that I asked you when you told me which language is this going to be? And you said,
Yeah.
okay, it's going to be in English, the first one. But are you planning to publish it in other languages too? So that's to say,
Yeah.
the basic language that Anna speaks with the people around her in other languages as well.
Yeah, so I tried to. So the first one is going to be, so like you said, in English, but it means that it's for children who live in an English-speaking country. So, for
Mhm.
example, my sons live in the UK, but it can be for children living in the US or Australia, etc. And but it could be combined with any language. It can be French, Korean for my sons. They also want to make a copy in Japanese, but yeah, so I would probably be writing that one, but to teach them as well, or maybe with my mom. I don't know. Yeah, and so originally I wanted to make it in loads of languages straight away, but translating cost money. So the main focus for this Kickstarter campaign is English, and then there are stretch goals that are possible with Kickstarter. So the first stretch goal I have included is for children living in a Dutch-speaking country, and that's because after some polls I've done in different Facebook groups, the language that was the most in demand was from people living in Dutch-speaking country. So yeah, these are going to be the first two, and then we see how the campaign goes. But then I probably add other languages, or but it's anyway. If I can publish the book, it's in my plans to publish it in lots of different languages, so it can help children in many different countries.
Yes, and I was even thinking about when you were saying this right now, that would be also a great exercise for those who speak English and or can read and write English and to give them also the opportunity to write their own. You know, maybe they change some words, they change some scenes, but they can still keep
Yeah,
the images. That would be a nice way maybe to integrate it in also for older children even, yeah, that
yeah,
they write a translation in their own way for younger children. But this goes far beyond what you have in mind. I think sometimes my ideas gallop somewhere else. But
I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking as well. It can be for like international schools when they have children who all live in the same country, but all have not maybe not all, but they have many different languages, so they can create their own versions. And also these scenes that are specific to families can differ for every child as well. Yeah, so it can be used in international schools as well.
yes, I think it's a great exercise, a great way to explore these languages,
Yeah,
apart from how they already do in many schools. But um, so you start with Anna,
Yeah.
Is Anna's adventure going to carry on in another book? Because you were mentioning before, okay, a graphic novel, it is a book, it's a longer story, you have to turn many pages to come to the end. Will there be a series of Anna's adventures, or maybe
So
Ben or Kevin, I don't know, others?
yeah, at the moment it's a maybe, because first I want to see if this book works. That's why the story ends properly. There is a proper end. It's not a cliffhanger where you think what's going to happen after.
Yeah.
Yeah, so depending on the success or not of the book, there will be a following book or not. But yeah, so I have a few ideas of how it could carry on. But I prefer not to try to spend too much time thinking about it for now, so I don't get too excited.
Yes, no, I understand. I fully understand. And maybe can you tell us a little bit more about the timings? Where are you standing right now with the development of, or the writing and of the
Yeah.
novel?
So the whole novel has been sketched out, and everything has been written and edited as well. But at the moment, the illustrations have been only professionally illustrated. So a third of it has been professionally illustrated. Uh, and because I don't have enough funds, but that's why I'm running a Kickstarter campaign, because I think this project interests quite a lot of parents. Uh, and so by crowdfunding the funds that I have left to pay to get the illustrations, the book printed and shipped, yeah. So right now I am 10 days away from the Kickstarter to start, and then it will last for 30 days. And during that time, if we manage to reach the goal, uh, I'll be able to publish it, or first to carry on with the illustrations. So I think it would take about 3, maybe 4 months to illustrate fully, and then to get the book printed and shipped to me. I'm using a local printing company in the UK. So it doesn't take much. It's about a 2-week turnaround, but I'm just in case I'm seeing a month, just in case there is any problem. So by end of March, beginning of April, this book will be available.
Yes, and this actually answers also one of the questions that I had. I just put it on screen because you're doing everything yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
I see a lot of resources that are made in groups and financed by whoever, several funds and projects, but this is actually a project, a personal project of yours, and that you are doing from the moment of you got the idea up to now, pretty far,
yeah,
and with all the details and all the different steps, which is for everyone who is following, who doesn't know what self-publishing means, it is like a separate job. Okay, so Yoshito has, I don't know if you clone yourself or if you have a secret twin, but that seems a little bit like that, because how can you do, this is not a question, it's just me wondering, how can you, do everything, like being a father, being a teacher, and self-publishing a book, and running this, and producing all these resources that you have on your site, and more. So let me quickly share the Kickstarter. Maybe you can tell a little bit more. So this is the
yeah,
link that we will
yeah.
share also in the description of the video on YouTube. But this is where people can tell us more.
So that's the link to get to the Kickstarter page. So at the moment it's not live. It's going to come live on the 17th of October. But now you can see there is a small green button at the at the bottom of the page that says notify me on launch. So it's, if you register, you're going to be told on launch day that the Kickstarter has started, see all the details, etc. And also, I would recommend people to get notified, because on the first 2 days, I'm going to give out an extra bonus reward which is a booklet that for children to learn how to turn their multilingual abilities into a superpower. So it's for them to see that it's like all the potentials that it can bring them to be multilingual or bilingual.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, please go and have a look at this Kickstarter project, and you can find it also, I think, on your site, right?
Yeah.
This
So
one, I think here.
yeah.
Is it
So
the
in
one?
here on this link, you have all the details of what the book brings to the children, why I wrote the book, and the aim of it. So what we can do with the book, and also there is a link that you just showed before to get notified. There is another link as well on the page to see the rewards that go with the Kickstarter campaign, because Kickstarter is not just crowdfunding, like please give me money to do this. It's you pay for the book, but you also get rewards, and so there are lots of rewards that are available for families, for schools, and also for sponsors as well, if there are people who want to sponsor. Yeah, so one of the things I could mention, except this booklet about how to turn your multilingual abilities into a superpower, I'm preparing also like a journal for multilingual children. It's also to help them to help them see the value of speaking different languages, and but it's made more like a journal for them to be able to write in it. And so I'm going to publish it first in English, but the aim is also so that's one of the stretch goals as well, is to publish it in 5 different languages. So there'll be a vote for what are the home languages that are the most in demand, and then I get it translated in the 5 most demanded languages. So the journal could be also a way for children to write in their home language different things. So I'm going to make it accessible for different levels. So some maybe will write just a bit, some quite a lot, but it's more reflection on who they are, what's good about being multilingual, bilingual, and with quotes. I'm hoping some interviews as well. Yeah, so hopefully it's going to be in different languages. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing what languages will come out of all this. And I don't know, maybe would you mind if we just focus a little bit before then coming more or less to the end? We still have time to focus on what graphic novels are good for, because I think when we shared about this interview today, this Let's Talk today, we
Yeah.
were at least I saw some comments like, "Oh no, I don't read graphic novels. We don't use comics." You know, then there was this
Okay.
misunderstanding. It's a comics. It's not a comics. But on the other hand, also comics are very educational, I must say. But it is also a cultural difference
Yeah.
towards these books.
Yeah.
I don't tell you how much I've heard about, oh no, I don't use picture books. There are no words. They are useless. And I said, no, the contrary is a fact. But I would like to, if you don't mind, maybe we can go through these points that I set up, that I mentioned before, where we can maybe point out, generally speaking, what graphic novels are actually good for or
Okay.
why they are so good.
So from
Maybe, yeah,
multilingual point of view, a child growing up with different languages.
yes.
So I guess the main benefit is that it's easily accessible, because as I said at the beginning, there are illustrations that help understand the situation, and also so help understand new words very easily. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing that's lacking when we live in a country is exposure to the minority language.
Yes,
So when we live, like we have a daily life, we go to the same club, do the same activities, talk about the same things. So the vocabulary stays, like, doesn't expand very easily.
very
In
true.
the majority language or in the school language, we learn different subjects in these languages, in that language, so the vocabulary expands really quickly. We speak about, oh yeah, with friends, it's a bit the same. It's probably always the same thing, but I guess the school and the fact that we have to understand the language to be able to function in the society makes us learn a lot more vocabulary.
Yeah.
And these books, so books in general, are good because you can project yourself in a new situation. I
Mhm.
think I mentioned that in our previous interview a long
Yeah.
time ago. But in Japanese, I've learned a lot of vocabulary to do with crime and detective things because I was reading a comic book about this. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, and also
Mhm.
it's accessible, so children can start reading very easily.
Yes.
You want
Let me share this slide that I prepared that I mentioned before.
yeah,
So when we talk about graphic novels, no matter how they are set up, or how much text there is, if there's more text, less text, etc., but they actually use images as well as words to tell a story. And we all know how important it is to know how to tell a story, how to
yeah,
say what happens first and then and after that and in the end and finally and then maybe go back. So that is a skill that we may want to foster in all the languages our children
mm, yeah,
are expected to use, not only understand but also to speak.
yeah,
So you mentioned the fast pace. I like this fast pace because I must say that my children, whenever they were confronted with a new language, graphic novels or comics, let me just put them all together somehow,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't mind.
roughly.
Um, you see the exciting plots, you see the colors that come up and say, oh, there is something happening. And then you turn the page and maybe you skip something, but you still get the gist of the story. I'm talking now about very young children. The older ones, they can see how the action goes, how the action is structured, and the attention of the reader is actually kept very, and he stays or she stays very energetic. And it's
Yeah,
also very good for reluctant readers.
yeah,
I have one of my children is a reluctant reader, now less than many years ago.
yeah,
And I thank comics, graphic novels. We have a lot of these Asterix books that you see there,
yeah,
and also, well, this Anne of Green Gables, etc., that she read, that made her really enjoy reading, and then also become a faster reader and more confident reader also for other books. Then
yeah,
it builds vocabulary, like you just mentioned, right? And I think it's a myth that fewer words mean simple words. This is not true.
yeah, no,
Because I imagine, and this is, I think, something that we didn't mention before, but when you chose the words for your graphic novel, you had to think twice, three times, four times. What do I put into these pages or in these speech bubbles?
so
What kind of vocabulary do I use?
yeah.
Or how long do I make the sentences, right?
So I really want this to be a flexible material.
Mm-hmm.
So if, for example, the child is like starting to be able to write, maybe they're not going to write or to know how to write something. So it can be the parent who write it on a piece of paper and they can copy,
Mm-hmm.
but it should always be something that the child is okay to put the effort in. If it looks too much like a struggle, they're going to want to quit. So there won't be the benefit. So how long or how much, it depends on the child. And yeah, and yeah, it depends on the child and how much effort they want to put in.
Mm-hmm.
And also that's why it shouldn't be like the parent can invite the child to start writing in it to keep like to remember what they came up with, but not to tell them, okay, now we're going to write, because then it's imposed and it's less fun.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, as I said before, if it's too much like schoolwork, uh, at least for me, my son, many friends I know, it's a bit off-putting. Uh,
Absolutely. Yes,
but
absolutely. And I think this special combination of images and text that needs to be filled out, it keeps this like conversation between images and words
yeah,
alive throughout the whole story. Because you're constantly, as a reader of this kind of graphic novel, you constantly need to figure out the relationship between the text and the images. You see the
yeah,
image, you imagine, oh, he's sad. and maybe no, he's not sad, he's just thinking about something. And so we have also this kind of cultural portraying of, yes, non-verbal communication, etc., that comes into play. And it develops the reading skills, right, that you said before. They are reading,
picking up the clues in the text,
yes,
the images,
exactly. And
yeah,
they notice maybe punctuation. Yeah, if you have this once translated into Spanish, for example, they use different
yeah,
punctuation marks or exclamation, and so that they, I wouldn't say intuitively, but without thinking about how the grammar works, yeah, it's not like a big kind of piece that you put in front of them. They're just reading it and say, oh, look, the question marks are like this, the
yeah,
exclamation mark are set there, and they just learn it by enjoying the reading of
yeah.
them. And
And maybe one thing I could add is because in the when our children want to make some work or like to write or something, and they know it's going to be displayed or it's going to be something that's going to be significant, they pay more attention. They want it to be really nice. So I think that's a perfect time to tell our children, okay, for example, oh yeah, at the end of the verb in French, you put ent if it's plural, etc. And they're going to remember it better because they want to make it right in the book. So if you're thinking like, oh, my child doesn't listen when I explain things about grammar, etc., that can be a way to get them to pay attention because they will want it to be correct in the book so they can be proud of it. Yeah,
yes. And then I mentioned the encourage analytical thinking. This means that the pupils, if you use them, for example, in the class setting, yeah, not at home, but you can use them also in the class setting.
yeah,
They can relate these stories or this kind of story that you have there to the real life situation, right? When you are visiting someone in Japan or in Korea or wherever this is then situated, and you can access also a deeper meaning of the message that is sent through the
yeah,
story. And I would like to briefly mention also the last point. So it helps those with learning differences. So let's say readers with autism, for example, they can learn about their emotions by observing the images. Yeah,
ah,
they can learn about how someone who looks sad is sad or happy, because it's sometimes exaggerated,
yeah,
and read the story in their own way and pace.
yeah,
Or those with dyslexia, you can read the page or even the whole book without feeling too overwhelmed
yeah,
by the number of words per page, and you have this kind of help for imagination. You can say, okay, this is how Anna looks like. If you
ah,
had to write about this in a chapter book, you would have to describe the whole scenery. In
yeah,
this way, you look at the picture and you have it. You don't
yeah,
have to describe all that, which is
yeah,
sometimes, especially for emergent readers, very difficult to to process, and it's challenging sometimes.
yeah,
But it makes also, and I would like to mention that I have here one. It's not a graphic novel; it's similar. It was one of the books that I read with my little children.
ah,
It's the Ulysses. It's the Odyssey, and
yeah,
it's actually in very big
ah,
ways that they learn also very complex texts or think about Shakespeare when our children need to learn Shakespeare or later on. So we are not only talking about very young children, but also older children. The way to approach different texts can be, or more longer texts, first with a graphic novel or a comics, graphic novel,
yeah,
etc., makes it much more appealing for them. For example, last year or 2 years ago, the Divina Commedia, the Divine Comedy from Dante, which is
yeah,
huge. It's that is a must-reading experience for many Italians, or most of Italians, all Italians or Italian speakers. And they made a comics out of this that
ah,
is much more approachable, like
digestible,
a
yeah,
Topolino. It's a Mickey Mouse or something like that. That is also for adults. And I must say also, when adults learn a new language, these graphic
It's so
novels help a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add a point? Because you talked about children with dyslexia, and
Yeah.
I just want to say, so for the graphic novel, I'm choosing a font
Oh,
that's easier to read for people with dyslexia.
great.
And so they're not very popular in books because they probably don't look as professional. But I guess that's one of the advantage of publishing on my own, is that I can make all the decisions and make it more accessible for everyone.
That's amazing. That would have been one other question that I had. Are you going to write it in a way that also dyslexic children or parents? Don't forget that sometimes the parents are dyslexic as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and want their children to approach texts in a more enjoyable and fun and yes, entertaining way. We have a question by a Facebook user. Sorry, I don't know
Yeah.
who you are. Just curious, how could you find an illustrator to help you? Thank you. He asked that.
So on Facebook, there are different groups for illustrators, authors. It's mainly to network and to give tips to each other. And so I posted. So I was in a group for children's book authors, and so I said, I know it's not really the genre that most illustrators do here, but would there be anyone who at least knows someone to recommend for an illustrator? And I got a few that were recommended. Then so I had to interview them, and then I picked the one that I thought was the most suited for this project.
Maybe you can also share then a link to a Facebook group or to a site where people can
Yeah,
find illustrators, and then you can actually choose among a pool of illustrators, and they can send you also some sketches, so you see if the style is what you like, or they have also.
Yeah. So if for the person who is looking for an illustrator, I would also recommend to get some recommendations. So if someone says, I can do that for you for that price, make sure that they have recommendations, because there are also lots of people who are scammers. So we need to be careful. And I can if it's on Facebook, I can maybe PM that person to give some other advice.
Yes.
Yeah, because there are scammers everywhere, unfortunately.
Yes, we have to be very careful of who we hire. Exactly. And Yoshito, the last question before we
Yeah,
maybe round it up. But at the Library for Multilinguals, which is also your website, you focus on books for multilinguals. Among these, now this graphic novel that is coming out. Do you plan other kind of projects like this in the future?
yeah. I have quite a few, but so one that's probably going to be the first one is a series of books that are going to be chapter books this time, but with a section to talk about the culture, and a bit more about the grammar, and but still through fun activities.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I do that in French first, because that's my main language, the language I teach as well.
Mhm.
But then it will be in other languages later on.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, and also because this graphic novel is for children aged 8 to 12, it's
Mhm.
perfect for them. It can be for a bit older as well, maybe, but the story might not be as interesting if children are a lot older.
Mhm.
So these books are going to be for more teenagers, so 14 to 18 probably, so that it gives also something for multilinguals who are a bit older to read and to enjoy in their languages.
Yes. And I can imagine that it would be also nice to have a similar one for younger children and for teenagers and for adults as well.
Yeah.
Please, please.
That's a lot of things I have to think about, but
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
I know. I
but yeah,
know.
so yeah, I called my company the Library for Multilinguals for two reasons. The first one was because I wanted like children, multilingual children, to be able to read in all their languages and to have their own library in each of their languages, but also because I wanted to create this library, so to create all these books that they could be reading. So I'm at number 2 now, but there'll be loads more hopefully, so it can become a library.
Yes. And would you like to have also collaborators at it? That is the last question.
Yeah, so for example, the series of books that I told you about, that I'm going to start in
Yeah.
French, I will be looking for collaborators to transfer them into another language. I say transfer, not just translate, because there are cultural aspects that are in the book. So these would need to be adapted, but most of the script would stay the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so but that's probably for next year, 2023, I work on this French version. And so probably 2024 would be when I start translating into other languages.
Okay. So it's a short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals are already set. So we are that's great. I would like to just focus on the last time on this side. So please, if you would like to know more about this new graphic novel by Yoshito Darmon-Shimamori, please go on his site, libraryformultilinguals.com/about -1. There you will find all information that you need, and also to support him. And please share this information with colleagues, friends, etc. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to follow us. I know it's not always easy to follow live, but if you follow us afterwards, if you watch the recordings, please ask your questions or leave your comments in the comment section on YouTube, and we're going to continue the conversation there. Meanwhile, Yoshito, I wish you all the bestest best. I know it's grammatically incorrect, but I just take the liberty to do this mistake, to
Yeah.
make this mistake. For your campaign for this graphic novel, that I can say, well, I had the privilege exactly to see also what it is about. And I really am looking forward to seeing it all, to having it in my
Thank
hands
you
at
very
one
much for all
point.
your support and help and for this
Oh,
interview. Thank you very much.
yeah, you're very welcome. And I hope that a lot of people will support you, and that in a year's time, you will be saying, okay, I have the next one almost ready, and you have the next Kickstarter campaign. So please support Yoshito with this. And thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking forward to seeing more from
Thank you
your.
very much, Uta, for your time. Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Bye.
Bye.